What's up, good people? Hello. This is a review for Persuasion. Doing it virtually, trying and experimenting with new things. So I hope this works for you. You can obviously pause, stop, rewind, so on and so forth. If the video is glitchy, I apologize. There may be some issue with Zoom or the recording process. So here we go. Let's get into it. Let's do a little bit of Jeopardy, and then on top of Jeopardy, what we can do is we can look at the test itself. So let's start from the beginning. Okay, so the expectations for being nice and professional is the same for female doctors and male doctors. That is false. The expectations for female doctors they're supposed to be kinder, more compassionate, and then male doctors can get away with being a little bit more mean and not as attentive, so on and so forth. So there's different standards. Another question. These are more easily influenced by reference groups than it is. High self-monitors are more easily influenced by reference groups than low self-monitors, because high self-monitors really care about their image, so they're influenced by the group that they are that they use as a standard for comparison for themselves. Gretchen is a public speaker who recognizes differences in perspectives among her audience. She attempts to cater her message to her listeners and is more persuasive, which highlights the idea of what charismatic, cognitively simple, cognitively complex, or high in need of cognition. This is cognitively complex because what Gretchen is doing is she's looking at the world through multiple perspectives, through multiple lenses. List and explain 4 types of audience characteristics. So we were talking about things like age, gender, culture, intelligence. Those kinds of things are important characteristics when we are engaging those that are around us. Now, argumentativeness is generally a constructive trait. That is true. There's 2 types. There's aggressiveness and there's argumentativeness. So argumentativeness is generally viewed as constructive. Expectations we have about what behaviors are right and wrong. These are norms. You might have thought they might be rules, because what happens is, but with rules, you have actual laws that support that. But norms, they're just expectations of what is right or wrong. There's no law against picking your nose, but there is a norm against picking your nose in front of others, of course. Okay, so this one is fun. Bjorn has decided to join a fraternity, but before he gets in, he has to go through an initiation. During the initiation, he has to go through all sorts of pain and humiliation. Which of the following is most likely? It is C. Bjorn will join the fraternity and will feel more committed to it than he would have without the initiation. So pain leads to effort justification. So because he went through a painful experience, he is more likely to follow and to commit to the group in a more significant way. It's counterintuitive, but this is how our psychology works. Explain the concept and consequences of de-individuation. Well, de-individuation is where you lose your identity in the group, and this could be a dangerous phenomenon because you start to do what the group does, and there's a diffusion of responsibility. So you no longer feel as responsible for your behavior as if you were by yourself. A denotative explanation refers to the dictionary definition. That is true because denotative has to do with dictionary definition. Connotative has to do with the associations with a particular term. Okay, an example of a symbol is, it's the word chicken. Now you might think, what about a thunderstorm or a cat's meow? Well, okay, go to another country and listen to a thunderstorm. It's going to sound the same whether you're in the United States or you're in Thailand or you're in Russia. But the word chicken, if you're in the United States, it's chicken. If you're in Mexico, it's el pollo. If you're in Russia, it's kuritsa. So that the symbol is an arbitrary, it's something that changes based on the context, and it's agreed upon by a particular culture and a group. So the cat's meow the same no matter where you go. And the feeling about the idea of love, the feeling is not necessarily a symbol. So that is a symbol is usually a word or a sign. Which of the following is not a type of ultimate term? It is powerful terms. There's three types of ultimate terms: God terms, devil terms, and charismatic terms. Explain the superior worth hypothesis. Well, the superior worth hypothesis posits or says that our language shapes our perception and how we view the world. So language literally changes the way that we perceive and engage with the world around us. Body language is a small but somewhat significant part of communication, of effective communication. False, false, false. Body language is extremely important. It's a huge part of communication. The most effective means of persuasion in retail sales is what? Using profanity? Probably not. Using powerless language? No. Mirroring nonverbal behaviors or emphasizing adapters. Remember, adapters are negative signs that reveal negative emotions. So it's mirroring. You want to mirror, you want to copy other people's behavior because that helps you sync up with them and build a strong and powerful connection. Which of the following is true about expectation violation theory? A, there are expectations of behavior in various social situations. B, status plays a role in whether behavior is viewed positively or negatively. And C, all violations of behavior expectations are viewed negatively. So is it A and B for D, or is it E, all of the above? It is A and B because C is not correct. All violations of behavior expectations are viewed negatively. Some violations of behavior expectations can be viewed positively. Think of your boss who never seems to care about you, and then they violate that behavior by being extra nice to you and extra kind and extra caring. It's a violation of your expectation, but it's a good violation, and so you view it positively. Okay, explain and provide 4 categories of body language and how they can be perceived positively and negatively. So remember things like smiling. Proxemics is how close you are to somebody. Haptics has to do with touch. Kinesics has to do with movement. So there's different kinds of aspects to the way in which we engage with body language. So that's a few questions, or at least a good number of questions that we went through for the Jeopardy. So why don't we move on? Let me stop sharing. And why don't we move on to some test questions for you. So let's do that. Give me just a second to open this up. Just a second. All right, so let's get down to this. So remember, what is the role of mirroring in the process of connection? Remember, if you're trying to build a connection with somebody, you should mirror the other person's the other person's body language. That helps you build a more powerful connection. So what do you want to do in sales? What's an effective way of persuading somebody in sales? It's things like eye contact. It's like using open body language, providing consistent mirroring, those kinds of things. Make sure you know the theories of direct effects model of immediacy, theories of communication accommodation theory, reinforcement theory, language expectancy theory. Make sure you know those. Know what paralinguistics is. Are you more persuasive when you use open or closed body language? It's obviously open. Know what kinesics is and what it isn't. Know the direct effects model of immediacy. Communication accommodation theory, remember with that, what you do is you match the style of your audience. So if you're using more intense language, you need to match it to the audience that is more intense. If your audience is less intense, you're going to use less intense language. So communication accommodation theory simply highlights that you match the language of the audience. Remember the power of labeling. So we can call somebody a terrorist, a martyr, or a freedom fighter, and that all changes our perception of that person. Remember the superior worth hypothesis? So superior worth hypothesis says that language influences the way that we think and perceive the world. when is it useful to use powerful, vivid, and emotional language? Think about that. When is it useful to use that kind of language? Know the different examples of powerless language. Know God terms, devil terms, and charismatic terms. So if I give you an example of a devil term, be able to distinguish it or to know it. Know the different types of powerless language, as I already mentioned, such as hedges, hesitations, remember, as I already mentioned, communication accommodation theory, language expectancy theory, and reinforcement theory. I mentioned that already. Which theory assumes that people are motivated to seek pleasure and avoid pain. No euphemisms and doublespeak. So remember, you can call somebody as being, effective interrogation. You can call something an interrogation technique, or you can call something torture, and that's how you can label it in multiple different ways. And that's the idea of euphemisms and doublespeak, using language strategically to communicate certain ideas. No connotative and denotative definition. So denotative is dictionary definition. Connotative is the mental associations with a particular kind of, or the emotional or the various thought associations. So for example, a dog is a four-legged mammal. That's the denotative definition, but a dog is a person's best friend is a connotative definition. Know what a symbol is. So remember, a symbol is something that stands for something else. Usually it's a word. Know groupthink. Know what reference groups are. Know the 4 stages in the cult formation. So there is the softening up stage, there's the compliance stage, there's the internalization stage, and there's the consolidation stage. So know all 4 and be able to illustrate them. Know what social loafing is. It's when you do less work when working in a group than when working alone. How can you fight against de-individuation? So if you have a mob of people, the way that you reverse de-individuation is by you help the person understand their own role and their own unique agency in a situation. Know what de-individuation is, definition of it. Know what social proof is. Remember high and low distance power cultures. So somebody in a high distance power culture is more likely to submit because they view the culture as having a high range of authority, versus in a low power distance culture like the United States, people are less likely to conform. So people in low power distance contexts are a little bit more rebellious than people in high distance power contexts or cultures. What is ethnocentrism? Make sure you know ethnocentrism. Know what a reference group is. Know the informational influence of groups and normative influence of groups. So informational influence is you want to be right, and normative influence is that you want to fit in. Know the social impact theory and social judgment theory. No social impact theory, no social judgment theory. No rules and law and norms. Rules and norms. What's the difference? No cognitively simple and cognitively complex. So if I just judge you based on your economic background, that's cognitively simple. But if I make a judgment based on your economic background, your grades, your IQ, your political affiliation, when I'm looking at multiple categories or multiple aspects, that's cognitively complex, looking at the situation from multiple perspectives. Once again, remember the social judgment theory and things like latitude of acceptance, latitude of rejection. Know the difference between verbal aggressiveness and argumentativeness. So verbal aggressiveness is when you attack the person, like name calling, so on and so forth. And argumentativeness is when you actually argue against somebody or a certain kind of idea. You're focusing on the idea, not the person. When you're aggressive, you're focusing on the person, not the idea. When you are argumentative, you're focusing on the argument and not the person. Remember high self-monitors and low self-monitors. High self-monitors are very sensitive to their image and how other people perceive them. What's the relationship between intelligence and persuasion? So if you're more intelligent, are you more easily persuaded or are you less easily persuaded? And what kind of a phrase would go for a collectivistic culture versus an individualistic culture? So if you are the best, that's probably a very individualistic statement. You are part of a community, that's probably a very more collectivistic statement. Remember reinforcement expectancy theory and how it relates to males and females, how females are oftentimes expected to act nicer and be nicer and get along more than males. How can you decrease a child's vulnerability to advertising? Think about that for just like how can you, what are some practical things you can do? And then also, once again, remember the difference between a low and high self-monitor and how advertisement can influence them. And so that's pretty much it. I hope that gives you some foundation for what you need to do, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you so much.